Everybody, it is Monday, April 28th. Thank you for joining in another live stream here on the RAS Picks YouTube channel, as well as listening on Apple and Spotify. We'll see how long I make it. As you can tell, the voice far from 100%. It has been a rough couple of days trying to make it through this, and so we've got the tea on hand, and we'll see if it ends up getting too much and the voice really gives out. We'll send this out in a newsletter shortly after, so you won't miss anything. But as you can tell, a little bit under the weather here as we go through the NFL draft. It's April. It's that time of year. Everybody tends to get something, and I'm always going through something this time of the year. So bear with me as we go. This was a fun weekend. NFL draft is now complete. Schedule release comes on May 14th. We'll have a lot of projections, a lot of commentary, a lot of previews leading up to May 14th. And so those will go out here on the channel, as well as Apple, Spotify, and the footballbetters.com email newsletter. Free email newsletter to follow. You can head over to footballbetters.com to sign up. Sent out immediate reactions for the draft. We'll have everything you need to know going into the schedule release coming up in just over 2 weeks. The NFL never sleeps, and this is a prime example of it. So that's coming quick, and we'll give you everything that you need to know heading into it in just a couple of weeks. In this episode today, we're going to talk about the draft that was, the favorites, the losers, the winners. We'll talk about high upside picks that maybe went a little bit unnoticed with gambles taken by teams that could really pay off. We have initial awards odds posted as well. So we'll get into some offensive rookie of the year looks, defensive rookie of the year looks, and any questions that come in via YouTube in the live chat. We'll be happy to answer those as we go. Let's start off with the best draft classes by teams. I think number 1 was Arizona. Number 2 was Carolina. And this was a good combination of meeting needs by both teams, as well as filling holes that both of the teams had to go in the direction that the coaching staff was pushing. I think Arizona absolutely nailed it. Walter Nolan had him in the mock draft first round that I did last week. I think it's a perfect fit on the defensive line. For me, the Cardinals were one defensive lineman away from this defense really taking a leap forward this season. I think they're going to contend to be a well above average unit. This unit played very hard last year in every single game, despite having issues getting stops. The way that Jonathan Gannon runs this defense is admirable, and you add a guy like Walter Nolan in the first round, it's a slam dunk fit. But in round 2, they took, I think, a really calculated gamble, taking Will Johnson from Michigan, the cornerback. He was projected in some places to go as high as 13th to the Miami Dolphins. There were even ties with some early over-unders at 11.5 for Johnson. And there's injury concerns with him. But if Arizona gets their due diligence right and they get a healthy Johnson, adding him into this lineup at the defensive backfield is a huge potential win for them. Then they go in the next 3 rounds, 3, 4, and 5. They add edge rusher, linebacker, corner to add more depth. I think this is a team with a clear vision in the draft. They nailed it with a couple of picks, have some serious upside, like everything Arizona did. It's a very sneaky team going into this season from a futures perspective. The other team I think that did very similar was the Carolina Panthers. Getting Ted McMillan in round 1, I think, was a bit of a surprise to some. Late money on Thursday really came in and supported Ted, but you add a wide receiver who's projected to be wide receiver number 1 coming in week 1. I saw Mike Clay has him projected for over 900 yards as a rookie in this offense. If you think about the ties between Ted and Mike Evans, and the season that Mike Evans had in 23 working with Dave Canales, and you think about Brad Idzik and his history working with wide receivers, young guy as an offensive coordinator, but some really strong ties to developing wide receivers already early on in his career. If that's a boost for Tet, I mean, there's serious upside of all the guys drafted to have an immediate impact on offense as a wide receiver 1. Then they go and they add some more depth on the defensive line. I think I was a little bit underwhelmed by what Carolina did in the free agency window to boost the offensive line and the pass rush. I saw really big commentary and support for their picks in round 2 and 3, adding in defensive edge rushers. And then you go and you have a running back added, something that they needed to have a little bit of a depth piece as well. So a very good draft class here from Carolina, and a team that I think continues to trend up. If I'm critical of anything, they didn't add a corner. And so perhaps that's something. I know they signed an extended Horn, but I would have thought they might have approached trying to get a corner somewhere. That would be kind of the only knock I have on Carolina, but very strong class here for the Panthers. Worst drafts, Miami and Cleveland for me. So Cleveland, I don't have any gripes with what they did in the first round. I think they may have gripes in the future passing on Travis Hunter. I think Mason Graham is a good fit. I think the knocks on Mason Graham were unwarranted last week, pardon me, trying to cite that he didn't do enough last year to be deserving of a top 5 pick. I think what they did in round 1 is fine. After that, I mean, this draft for Cleveland just went off the rails to me. I don't get the pick for Schweisinger, a linebacker who plays off ball, going 33rd overall, the first pick in the second round. Everything about that pick was trending towards Travion Henderson, and they elected to go off ball linebacker. And then they took what seems to be, from everything that I'm reading and everything that I'm hearing, the worst of the two options, with Judkins over Henderson with that second pick, with Henderson still available. So I think that was a miss. Harold Fannin, the tight end from Bowling Green, in the third round. And then they draft 2 quarterbacks along with another running back in Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders. What I don't quite understand here from Cleveland's perspective is I get that you need running back depth, but you effectively drafted 2, from scouting reports, as it says, north-south guys that might not get you a full 3 downs. And then if you're taking Gabriel in the third round, what are you doing with Sanders, adding another quarterback into that room? I don't understand what the direction is here for Cleveland, who is a team that I thought, when they made the trade and the move in round 1, they were a team that was looking forward to next year, once this salary cap hell they've been living in is resolved, to take quarterbacks next year in a class where the QBs speculated to be significantly better than what you're getting this year. So I don't understand the thought process here from the Cleveland front office, adding 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, and an off-ball linebacker. I thought there was a clear direction after how they handled round 1. That's not the case. So I think this was a miss by Cleveland. Miami was a team that just didn't do enough to fill any of their needs. They needed offensive linemen. They needed cornerbacks. They ended up going with Kenneth Grant, a nose tackle, in round 1. I think there were different directions they could have gone for offensive linemen. They add 1 guard in round 2, which was a nice pick. But then past that, you're waiting to take a corner until round 5. You're adding running backs and quarterbacks late. I think this was a miss from Miami, who just didn't do enough to fill their needs at offensive tackle, their needs at linebacker, and they spent that top pick on Kenneth Grant, who could turn out to be great. And certainly they probably need some depth on the defensive line. But for me, far bigger needs at corner, far bigger needs on the offensive line. And you could even say somewhat of a need at wide receiver, which was another position that they did not go out and address. Again, similar to Cleveland, I'm not sure what the direction is here for Miami. I'm not sure how they handled this and why they went the way that they did. I thought this was a miss from the Dolphins. So the 2 for me that were the worst were Miami and Cleveland. A couple comments coming in. Scott Cope says, I'm worried about Travis Hunter being with the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, the QB, the fact that he could play a lot of corner. Everywhere that I've read, Scott, is speculating that he's going to play a lot more corner as is. And the Jags certainly have a lot of need, but I wouldn't be concerned with him if he ends up playing a lot of wide receiver opposite of Brian Thomas with Trevor Lawrence throwing the football to him. That wouldn't be a big concern for me. But I do think, based on how it's being said, we'll see him play more corner than wide receiver. Birdie says, I have said this before, there is a content-wide Cardinals to be good narrative. The problem is their offense is the same, and I worry that the hope is unproven defenders. Here's my question. You said content-wide narrative. Is it how many people are really pushing that? I guess you're saying from the betting space. I think you've probably heard me say it. I think you've probably heard TA say it. And I would say there's maybe some others that might have said it, but I don't know if it's an original opinion on their part. So I wouldn't steer away from them just because of that. And I would think in a space where there's a lot of people saying it, it might be coming from just a couple of places, especially in April. I do find, Birdie, that there's a lot of there's a big push for content at this time of the year. And so there's a lot of shared opinions, I think. And so I wouldn't be scared off of it. This is a sneaky team that the only negative that I would say is, last year when they finished, they were 16th in market ratings. And so the underrated push probably isn't fair. Because, like, let's say the Cardinals finished 12th. 16th to 12th is not necessarily underrated. And so I was surprised looking back when they were rated that high to end last year a little bit. But we'll see what comes of that. I still think they're a sneaky team for sure. Nick says Cowboys have to be up there for the worst. We'll talk about that in a second. I thought the only reason I didn't have the Cowboys in there as the worst is I actually thought their picks in rounds 2 and 3 were better than their picks in round 1. Now, as you go down the rest of the board, I think it was a miss late rounds. But I thought Ezeraku in round 2 was a bit of a steal for Dallas, honestly. And I thought Ravel was where they got him, third round, 12. There were some guys that were speculating he could be very early day 2. So I thought second and third round for Dallas was pretty strong. Oh, it's a grind. All right, we'll talk about some favorite picks, just individual players that I had. Travis Hunter, number 2 for Jacksonville. I think the Jags going up to get him, how they handled that, how they handled things coming out with all the pressers and commentary. It's just refreshing to see an aggressive GM that stands by it, goes up, makes the move, and you have to like the fit, as we were just talking about, for Hunter in Jacksonville on either side of the football. It sounds like it's a lot more corner for Hunter. But even if he gets a lot of offensive snaps in, I mean, that's going to be a very fun offense to watch with Lawrence and Thomas. Lawrence missed, was it 7-8 games last year that made that team look way worse than they actually are? I think that's a pretty great fit for Hunter in Jacksonville. Speaking of great fits, next one, Malachi Starks, 27 to Baltimore. Playing opposite of Kyle Hamilton, the versatility for Starks and how they can use him on defense is going to be just brutal for opposing offenses facing this defense. We know Hamilton gets moved around a ton, can play up, can play back. How they use him varies snap to snap. And now you have a guy in Starks that can play both safety positions. Everything about how he was spoken about in scouting reports and commentary is just a perfect fit for the Ravens. So positionally, team-wise, this is a big win for Baltimore getting Starks at 27. Jahad Campbell falling to 31 for Philly. I saw him described as giving Vic Fangio a Swiss Army knife. And we kind of talked about it last Friday. Like, this is just such a Philadelphia pick. The fact that he fell was incredible for Philly. The fact nobody else took him as you got into the late 20s and let him go to Philly. A slam dunk pick for how he can be used in that Fangio defense. Another one that stands out, as we just said, Donovan Ezeraku, 44 to Dallas. There were a lot of mocks from people that I respect that had him going in the 20s. Personally, I had him 21, and I'm surprised to see he fell as much as he did. Pardon me, I had him 23 to Green Bay, not 21. 21 was the Steelers. The fact that he fell into the second round and Dallas was able to add him, I think that was awesome for what Dallas is able to put. You get him behind Micah Parsons, learning from him. If that is resolved, I think that's a fantastic fit. I think Dallas did really well getting him at 44. Something else that I would say, I don't have a banner for this, but Omar Norman Lott going 31 in the second round. So that's pick 63 to Kansas City. Last year, Chris Jones led all defensive tackles in the NFL in pass rush win rate. Omar Norman Lott in college led all defensive tackles in pass rush win rate. So we talk about Ezeraku learning behind Parsons. How about Norman Lott learning behind the next to Chris Jones and what that's going to do for that Kansas City defensive line, as you have the pro and college pass rush win rate from the inside playing next to each other on that defensive line for Kansas City. I thought that was a really good pick from KC at 63. And then Azare Thomas, 73, the cornerback going to the Jets. This was another guy that was speculated to be early, mid-day 2. The Jets get him midway through round 3. I think this is a great fit for the Jets, who moved on from some cornerback and some depth pieces in the secondary in the free agency window. And now you add Thomas, be very physical at the line of scrimmage, playing opposite of Gardner. I think it's a really good fit for Thomas with the Jets. Least favorite picks? Almost had the coughing fit here on air. I'm holding through. We'll get through this. Tyler Booker, number 12 for Dallas. I think Booker's a great guard. Everything that I've read about him says that he was the best guard in this draft. This isn't necessarily a knock on Booker, but as I look at the Cowboys, who is Dak Prescott, even if he's protected, going to be throwing to outside of CeeDee Lamb? I thought priority number one for the Cowboys in this draft was going wide receiver. They didn't address it at all. They didn't draft a single wide receiver in this draft. And where I kind of wonder where they go now is you have Schottenheimer coming in as the new head coach. Coming from Seattle, it's clear he has tendencies where he wants to run the football. I get it. Jerry Jones wants to run the football. They add multiple running backs in the free agency window. They draft Jaden Blue in the 5th round. So it's clear that the Cowboys want to run the football. But here's my problem. The Philadelphia Eagles defensive line stacked, as we just mentioned. The New York Giants defensive line stacked, as we just talked about earlier. The Washington Commanders defensive line, not as great as those two, but getting better. 6 of these games this season for Dallas, they're going to have a lot of difficulty in the division running the football. So on one hand, maybe Booker gives them a chance to run the football, but I just don't think they're going to be able to do it very well. So this is very much a coach, owner, GM combo wanting to run the ball, taking Booker. I'm guessing the Cowboys really wanted to take Tet. I thought this was a pick that made a lot of sense for Golden to address the wide receiver need, and they went Booker. And I don't think that's necessarily going to have the impact this year that a wide receiver this early might have. James Pierce with the trade up for Atlanta, going 26th in the 1st round. This could probably be viewed as the biggest overpay in the draft overall. I get that Atlanta needed pass rushers, but I just can't justify how the price that was paid to get Pierce can be warranted for going up to 26 to get him. He may turn into a great pass rusher, but in terms of just a pick and value standpoint, this was a miss. Carson Schweisinger, 33 for Cleveland, off-ball linebacker when they could have gone a lot of different directions. Don't understand it. Don't know why he went so early. He was a guy that certainly gained a lot of steam draft week for going earlier than projected, but he was a guy speculated to go 50th and beyond by Dane Brugler, by Daniel Jeremiah. There were some comments about maybe he sneaks in late day 1, but that was the ceiling. And now you're having him on this team that had so many other needs going this early. I don't understand that one. Now, Travion Henderson, 38, makes this category to New England. I think Travion Henderson can be a great running back in this league, and I'm surprised that New England took him, which is why I'm putting him in this category. How does he fit in with Ramondre Stevenson? I don't understand this fit. And New England, at this point in the draft, had a selection of wide receivers that were viewed as big picks for other teams. New England desperately needs pass catchers. I get they had Diggs. They still need more. And they add in Henderson to potentially share snaps with Stevenson to be running back 2. Everything about Henderson that was spoken positively in the week leading up to the draft was saying if he goes to Denver, he can be that 3-down back. Well, New England has Stevenson already firmly in this offense. And so where does Henderson fit in? I don't think I understand this from the Pats side. So that's why I have Henderson in this pick. Would have made a lot of sense to me for the Pats to go with any of these day 2 wide receivers. And they elected to go running back when they have a pretty great one in Stevenson. Dylan Gabriel, 93 to Cleveland. You can view this as taking Gabriel over Sanders being a reach. You can view this as the Browns depth chart being in the state that it was prior to this pick being unnecessary to take Gabriel. Now you can view this as Gabriel being taken in addition to Shadur Sanders. Like there's just so many ways to pick on why this was such a bad decision by Cleveland to take Gabriel at number 3. Don't understand how this training camp is going to work, how this offseason is going to work for Cleveland. This is a mess for the Browns that they made a lot worse with these 2 QBs and these 2 running backs. A couple gambles with upside I want to mention. These were picks that were guys that were taken that fell, but I think fell into a team that could prove to be quite valuable. Number one is Josh Simmons going 32 to Kansas City. He has a torn patellar tendon that is an injury that's much more difficult to come back from than other knee injuries. That dropped him to 32 for Kansas City. On the broadcast, Nick Saban said if Simmons would have come back to play college this year and had a full season, he would have gone top 5 next year. So big praise for Simmons. There was also commentary that he would have been a top 5 pick this year if he had not suffered the injury. Kansas City has gambled to try to fix their offensive tackle woes for the better part of 7 or 8 years now. Simmons, just talent-wise and how he's described, is probably the best opportunity to do so. The negative is, does he come back from this injury? 45% of players who suffer the injury that Simmons did never return to playing again. It's a very grim return to play process for guys who suffer this injury. If Kansas City wins on the due diligence, they may have solved their offensive tackle issues with Simmons. Similar conversation, Arizona, Will Johnson, 47th. A lot of injuries, a lot of inability to stay on the field, but still entered the draft with a lot of top 15 conversation. Arizona gets him at 47. And you think about this Cardinals team, I mean, if they get anywhere close to what he was projected to be when healthy, and they're able to get him healthy in this depth chart, this is going to be a really good secondary to go with a very much improved defensive front. I think this is pretty good for Arizona to get Johnson to 47. Some serious upside, a lot of health with the gamble that they're taking, but if they can keep him healthy, big win for that secondary. Mike Green at 59. Here's why I like this. He was not an injury concern guy. It was all a character concern with him. He had some legal issues that were disproven. Baltimore got a guy in Mike Green who was projected to go by almost every important mock drafter in the first round. They add him to the edge late second round. But the way that the Ravens handle their teams and operate from a coaching perspective, Green now goes into not only a very mature coaching staff situation, but a defense that's full of veterans, especially at his position. So to me, if there's a short list of teams that could manage some of the concerns that Mike Green has, Baltimore certainly fits that bill. And so I think they could turn Mike Green. They probably got a mid-first round edge rush talent in Mike Green late in the second round, which is a huge upside if they can manage what he is off of the field. And I certainly think the environment around him is set up to do so. This is not out of character for the Ravens. I think this is a great spot for Mike Green to land. Faduni agrees on Simmons, big upside, but is, again, what do you get from the injury? Henderson has Saquon talent. I haven't seen that reach on him anywhere. That may be something I missed. I certainly think he has a ton of potential. But what does New England do now with – how do they handle that with Stevenson? I don't necessarily get it. Gerard's pumped about the Seahawks. As always, the fact they got Zabel at 18 and Aman Worry at 35 when they were talking about Aman Worry at 18, possibly Zabel was gone, was great. So another one that stands up to where it could be like great fits. Nick Aman Worry was safety number 2, and the odds went back and forth. But everything that I read about him was the knock on Aman Worry was that he wasn't truly playing one position. Like, he wasn't fully a strong safety. Was he a linebacker? Was he potentially a defensive back? Like, how were they going to use him? And that was viewed as a negative. But what reminds me a lot about Aman Worry was how Mike McDonald used Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, putting him in multiple positions, moving him around. And so I actually think that's a really good fit and why they went up and traded for him. I think Mike McDonald sees a lot of similar traits, probably at a lesser ceiling with Aman Worry, and how he can be utilized as that chess piece on defense and how he can be moved around. And you put him with Rick Wollen and Devin Witherspoon. I mean, the creativity and the physicality. that can be had in this defensive backfield for Seattle, which, by the way, finished last year as one of the best units after they made all those changes in the bye week. Huge upside for the Seahawks defense with Mike McDonald adding it, and he got his chess piece there in Nick Manwari. So I agree. That's a great pick by them. 2 awards that stand out. So I'll go Offensive Rookie of the Year first. Ted McMillan, 14-1 in Carolina. He's projected by Mike Clay to be over 900 yards. I think if he exceeds that, which the betting odds certainly don't think he will, you can get 900 plus at plus 250. You think about what Ted McMillan could do as wide receiver number 1 if there's those Mike Evans comparisons and what Mike Evans did in 23 with Dave Canales running the offense and where that can go. I think Ted McMillan at 14-1, it makes for a good bet right now for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Talking about some of the other guys up there, Ashton Genty to the Raiders makes a lot of sense. Here's my concern about Genty. He's projected by Mike Clay for 1,100 yards. Are the Raiders going to be in a position where they're leading enough for him to really bank a lot of stats? I think the answer is no. Cam Ward with the Titans, I don't know what the upside is for the Titans this season. Is it 6 wins, maybe 7? I think the Panthers probably exceed that with Ted McMillan. And the Panthers, by the way, a team that's probably going to be playing from behind. Bryce Young throwing to him could stack some numbers in a positive way that you might not get with the Raiders for Genty. And then Tyler Shuck is 12-1. Travis Hunter, 750. Travis Hunter might play more defensive snaps than offensive. So I don't think you can have Hunter this high up the board. And then after that, it's running backs and Shedeur Sanders for other teams that are probably second or third string options to start. I think you look at Ted McMillan here at 14-1, he stands out. Amarian Hampton, 16-1 is tempting, but I'll go with the wide receiver 1 for an Offensive Rookie of the Year look. Defensive Rookie of the Year, to wrap up and get the voice back to some tea. Jahdae Barron, 20-1. Now, this could be over quickly if Travis Hunter ends up playing the majority of his snaps on defense and he gets all the accolades. He's going to be hyped up more than probably any other rookie playing both sides. So in a voter award, I mean, it's pretty clear how that could go. He's plus 750 because I think there's some uncertainty in the market about is he going to be a wide receiver or corner. Abdul Carter's the favorite. Michael Williams plays in a really bad pass rush with Atlanta. It'll be better this year, 9-1. Jalen Walker, 9-1. Pardon me, Williams with San Francisco. Walker with Atlanta. Sack numbers could be stacked up there. I get it. It's usually an edge rusher or a corner that wins this award. But why I would look at Barron here at 20-1, he's going to be playing opposite of Patrick Surtain. So that means that he is going to get a lot of wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 3 covers, which are probably going to be advantage plays for him. And when you think about interceptions that could be stacked up with quarterbacks throwing away from Surtain and opportunities to play on the ball with how great this Broncos defense is going to be this season, I think Barron finds himself in a lot of really good opportunities to make plays on the ball. I look at 20-1. I think that's a little bit long for him going into this defense that's going to be as great as it is. So 20-1 for Barron would be my pick for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I hope the voice wasn't too much of a difficulty to listen to over the course of today. Hopefully later in the week it starts to sound a little bit better, but I appreciate everybody who's tuned in for all of the draft coverage. This will wrap it up, and we will get to now changing gears into looking towards the schedule release, more team previews, more discussion on the season to come now that the draft is in the rearview mirror. So I'm going to go reload on some tea here and try get a bit of a reset with some Advil, but I appreciate everybody for stopping by this morning. Hope everyone has a great Monday. We'll chat to you again later in the week.